Lifelong New York resident Donald Trump is leaving his roots and heading to Florida. Today, the president confirmed the decision on Twitter, saying in part, quote, "My family and I will be making Palm Beach, Florida, our permanent residence. I cherish New York and the people of New York and will always will. But unfortunately, despite the fact that I pay millions of dollars in city, state and local taxes each year, I have been treated very badly by the political leaders of both the city and the state. Few have been treated worse." The move has already prompted remarks from top leadership in New York, like Governor Andrew Cuomo, who said in part, quote, "Good riddance. It's not like you paid taxes here anyway."
And Governor Cuomo joins us now. Governor, that's quite a tweet. First, why do you believe the president changed his legal residency? And what will this move mean for the current legal fights he's having with the state of New York?
Good question, and good to be with you, Stephanie and Ali. Quite a tweet. Yeah, well, that's to quite a tweeter. I think your question is right. There is a legal proceeding against the president from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, where they're trying to get him to turn over the taxes. I'm the former Attorney General of New York before I was governor. My guess is he was advised by his lawyers that it would help his case not to release his taxes to the Manhattan District Attorney if he could say he was no longer a resident of the state of New York. I don't believe it's going to be dispositive, but I could see it as a legal tactic, and the timing is coincidental because it's right in the middle of the district attorney's case looking for his taxes.
Governor, what do you say to those who would argue that a lot of people in New York move to Florida because it has no income or inheritance taxes compared to New York, which does have some of the highest tax rates in the nation? This may have nothing to do with Donald Trump's legal issues. It may have to do with the fact that once he's a private citizen, he doesn't want to pay New York taxes.
Yeah, a lot of people from New York move to Florida. A lot of people from the Northeast move to Florida when they retire. So maybe the president is planning on retiring. I don't know. But under my governorship, the tax rates for every New Yorker have come down. State spending is at record lows. And if anything, Donald Trump, I think, has alienated many of the people in the state of New York. You know, he raised New York's taxes when he passed his federal tax reform with the so-called SALT, elimination of state and local tax deductibility, cost New York $15 billion. His policies have alienated New Yorkers. You know, to be a real New Yorker, you have to be inclusive. We don't tolerate divisiveness. New York is all about different races, different ethnicities coming together in one community in one state. And they have no tolerance for the antagonism and divisiveness of President Trump. And he has heard that. He's come into the state to do fundraising, and there's been terrible protests. So I think it was a legal tactic. I think he knows that he's alienated New Yorkers, and his philosophy is repugnant to New Yorkers. And I think those are the main driving factors because, as I said, taxes have gone down under me, and the only one who raised taxes in New York is Donald Trump.
Well, will his legal plan work? We know that state prosecutors have been fighting to get the president's taxes since he took office. Will that fight continue now that he's not a New Yorker?
Oh, no, the fight will continue. And I think it's a desperate legal move where he's now going to argue, well, the state should have no right to my taxes because I moved out. I'm a Florida resident. That's besides the point. When you filed your taxes, you were a New York resident. If you defrauded the state, you defrauded it when you were a New York State resident. Just because you move out doesn't mean you're not liable for what you said in those taxes when you filed them in the state of New York. So it really is a desperate measure. But I think these are desperate times for the president.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.